I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Sarah Bridge, Music Supervisor on Netflix's flagship drama, The Crown. Now, Sarah, no joke, I really honestly believe that you have one of the coolest jobs on TV because you bring beloved characters to life through music, from timeless classics to left field oddities, while shining a light on how music is actually so instrumental in telling a story. So, first of all, talk us through what is the music supervisor there for? What are you trying to achieve?
Sure. I mean, in essence, the role of the music supervisor is essentially an HOD across any film or television production. So kind of anything music related, from sourcing composers and overseeing the score to any on camera to needle drops or commercial music used within it. But I think fundamentally, our goal and role is to support the director and the show's creator in any vision that they have, and really heightening the narrative, as you say, and kind of bringing characters to life, and just providing kind of additional emotional input and really kind of helping that narrative play out through the music as well, and connecting the audience with what's happening on camera.
Isn't it interesting how a song from a certain era or year or something like that, something where we connect to a certain emotion or event, can really just, nothing else can really do that like a song can. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music is just such a powerful medium for that. It's like everyone has something that will suddenly kind of jolt them for whatever part, and also really kind of takes you back to memories and periods of history, and particularly something like The Crown, where, with season 4, we were going into the 80s. It was the introduction of the kind of next generation of the royal family, and really kind of tapping into that by introducing a lot more kind of commercial music into this particular series. I mean, we've featured quite a bit in the past, and keeping it quite young and contemporary for that period at least. And equally, there's an episode like 405, which focuses on the character Michael Fagin, and that kind of felt like quite a standalone piece within the show musically, and it was a kind of a look into somebody's world and their life experience during this time, during the Thatcher years, and particularly during this turbulent time politically in history in the UK. And to really kind of be able to dig deep and source some music that reflected that, and kind of, I guess, fitted and reflected his kind of experience as well. So throughout, I mean, it's a powerful medium. It's brilliant.
It is.
And I'm very, very grateful to be able to work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so I'm glad that you brought the Fagin episode, because that was quite a big gamble on part of the show's creator and the team to pull us away from the Crown, so to speak, and kind of implant us into working class London, particularly during the Thatcher years. A lot of us connect that period of time to a lot of turmoil and social upheaval. And the music chosen for that episode really was very different, as you say, very standalone. Did you have any particular scenes or concepts that you struggled with to get the right sound for it?
No, there were definitely scenes where we explored various different tracks, and they had really kind of quite different connotations when we were laying them to it. And that was, that's a really fun part of the job, and to work with the director, Paul, and the editor, and obviously Peter Morgan, like throughout that. But no, I think fundamentally my first, actually, particularly with that episode, I went away and pulled together kind of quite a vast array of different artists, but that all felt reflective of his, maybe either the music that he would listen to, but also just the political kind of turmoil, as you say, at the time, and digging into that. And so what came out in the edit is that Ben Yates, the editor working on that particular episode, kind of started playing around and like laying stuff up, and then we refined it in post a bit more as we went along. But no, and obviously the end titles track was quite a kind of powerful outro for that, which was brilliant. And that was actually a scripted song that was already, scripted by Peter to kind of end on that track. So that's something I kind of pre-cleared very early on. But I guess it was a time, particularly, I mean, it's always ongoing, but politically in history, where there was quite a lot of artists and there were quite a lot of artists who were kind of creating quite politically led and kind of having a voice for what was happening and reflecting in the time in the UK. So it was an exciting episode to delve into from that perspective.
Yeah. And then looking at most of the other season, particularly the Diana episodes, or the episodes that focus a lot on her development, we get to hear some really awesome artists and some tracks that were chosen. For example, I love the use of Girls on Film in episode 3. Was that just a no-brainer for you? How long did it take to land on that one?
It kind of was, in a way, that we the first thing you do, particularly if they're if it's a biopic or not a biopic, if it's kind of focusing in on an individual, then you're going to dig into their taste and like research their history of like what they used to listen to and love. And Duran Duran are huge, like they were essentially quite well known as like one of her favorite, if not her favorite artists. So, it's a really fun scene within that particular episode. And that particular, the whole of this season kind of goes on quite an emotional journey with Diana. But that particular episode, Fairy Tale, which is episode 3 in season 4, is quite a standalone piece that we really kind of delve into her and travel from like right from the opening, which is opening on Charles's proposal, and Edge of 17 by Stevie Nicks. And that's actually, to kind of cut to that song, that's a song that at script level, Peter and I had a conversation about where we could, for me to go through and pull out some places where we might be able to feature some more commercial tracks and possibly even embed them into the filming process. And that was one of those moments where I was reading the script, and it was all of that whole sequence and montage happens pre-titles, but to have a track running all the way through the kind of joyous moment of her and her friends going out and celebrating and then landing on them in the club singing to the track was something that I kind of took to Peter and Benjamin Karen, the director of that episode, and we talked about it and listened to various tracks. And Edge of 17 really kind of stood out in many ways. It's such a kind of euphoric, joyous moment for her that runs through that. And yeah, it just worked. And it's always a kind of really a joyous and satisfying moment when you kind of see that all the way through the filming process and then into the edit, and it's staying put. So yeah, which is great.
It perfectly encapsulates her innocence, her wide-eyed kind of optimism at the beginning, but we all know where it ends up. And so there's always this undercurrent of dread, though. And I think that really hit home for me when thinking about the music in episode 6, which happens to be my favourite, Terra Nullius. I'm biased, I'm Australian, but Can't Take My Eyes Off You is utilised in various ways in that episode. And I found it to be really uncomfortable. And I just was wondering how intentional that was.
Yeah, it was. And we wanted to find something that fitted. So that's the scene which we did a new recording of it, obviously. And we went in, I had somebody come in board and rearrange it for the lineup that we were going to feature on stage. And then we went to Rack Studios and did the recording and featured the same musicians and singers on camera as well. And yeah, I think the intention, that whole sequence is an existing piece of archived footage, but with a different song in it. And Julian and Peter and I kind of sat down and talked about the songs and what was going to work there, particularly with Julian. And yeah, it was intentional to fulfill the magic of the moment, but also have a kind of undercurrent of, yeah, as you say, like discontent and is this going to last? And you kind of know that at that stage you're kind of hopeful that this is going to things are going in a positive direction, but also kind of knowing that that's not where it's going to end up, unfortunately. And I think, yeah, so within that, it felt like the right choice of song, and also kind of it was great fun to kind of go in and recreate a new recording of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I always wonder with someone like yourself how you interact and liaise with the composer. On this show, Martin Phipps's work is so amazing, and his themes for Diana, particularly there's a track called The Diana Effect, which is really aspirational and contemporary and hopeful, and then becomes quite melancholy. Beautiful work there that he does. How do you interact with his score, and when is it chosen to not use it and use an existing track instead?
Sure. I mean, Martin and I are friends, and I mean, every project's different for music supervisors. Sometimes you're very hands-on in the kind of composer score process, and sometimes it's more hands-off. And this is for me, it's the latter, as in that relationship is very much, you know, between Martin, the director, and Peter. I had the joy of attending the recording sessions though. It's always nice to turn up to those. But there are, as you say, there are moments where he and I have to kind of have a discussion about what the music's doing and how it's leading in and where things change. And actually, Song for Guy, going back to the fairy tale episode, is kind of a clear example of that, which was always originally set to be score. And then we started to kind of discuss experimenting with a commercial track over that sequence. So it was a completely different piece of music that she was actually dancing to on set on the day of filming. And then we kind of played around and obviously laid up Song for Guy, and it just worked beautifully over, or we felt it did, over that particular section. You know, it's Diana losing herself in emotion and dance and music, but also it's kind of very bittersweet moment for her. And obviously at the end of it, it kind of transfers and kind of transgresses into score. So that was something that, yes, Martin and I then have a conversation about that and how that's going to work. And he, you know, I'll give him the files, we'll go through the edits, etc. So there are definitely moments throughout the season where we have to have conversations about how things are going leading into the next. But yeah, I mean, his score is sublime for the show. He's done a great job.
It really is. The question that I like to always ask music supervisors is this, because I actually honestly really wonder it. How often are you cataloguing sounds and songs and music in your daily life? Oh, from your memories of, or that you file away and think, I'll use that later. Like, are you doing that often?
Relentlessly. All the time. I mean, I'm literally just, you know, anywhere I am, I have playlists, I have notes, I have, you know, folders of stuff that I've been sent. It's, yeah, in all different ways and avenues. But yeah, I've got kind of constant playlists of stuff, and also just songs that you love, like, or new discoveries. I have a whole playlist of like 2020, all of the new songs, and it's such a mishmash of different genres and different decades and just new discoveries of music. I guess we're always learning and listening to new music, and within that, yes, constantly swirling great ideas and beautiful works away. So yeah,
to use those little nuggets for when it comes up. Like, how exciting. Like, in fact, I just think it would be, you wouldn't want to miss out on anything. You just want to make sure you're covering your bases, so you've got everything at your fingertips. Which leads me to this. So how do you ever have to balance your desire to introduce us, the audience, to something that we don't know or something new, as opposed to using something very well known that we would instantly recognize? Does familiarity work in your favor, or do you sometimes not want to have it be familiar?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it really depends on the project, and some of that can be as simple as it's budget led, but more creatively, it's, you know, I think, you know, with a show like The Crown, familiarity is a really positive aspect of it. And I think kind of connecting with the audience, connecting with the period, pulling out particularly key songs, like it's an intentional thing that we do on The Crown, as opposed to digging deep and finding kind of lesser known, unless, you know, there's obviously a couple of cues along the way, and there is, you know, definitely one within the Fagin episode, or one or two cues that are kind of lesser known artists. It really depends. I've worked on a show set in the 70s, an underground kind of area in London, and that was me really digging out. I mean, I got to the point where one of the record labels, I'd found this article on Billboard, and one of the record labels went in and got the tapes out because there was no digital. It's now on Spotify, the artist, but you had to, like, a band called Noir, they released one album in 1971, and wow. And it was, yeah, they pulled the tapes out and digitized them, and obviously that's a joy and a lovely part of the job as well, which is to kind of really unearth like some hidden gems and find those as well. But it just depends on the project, and I guess looking at what is going to best kind of connect with the audience and deliver. So yeah, every project, I mean, that's also the joy of the job, right? It's like every project is completely unique in that respect. So yeah, it varies greatly, but
yeah, absolutely. You know, recently at the Emmys, given, you know, Gold Derby, this is what we talk about all the time. I think 4 years ago, they decided to shine a spotlight on your field with its own category, and winners have included all kinds of shows like Big Little Lies and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and nominees have included like This Is Us and Stranger Things. What has been the response from maybe just from yourself or from your peers to having a category that honors and spotlights the work that you do, that actually gives it some like credibility in the industry. What do you think about that?
I mean, we all think it's fantastic, obviously. I guess there is a craft now for the biffers in the UK, but there's nothing on the BAFTA side of things. I think the Emmys, creation of that, I think it's been for 2 years now. Maybe this is the 3rd or 4th year.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I think, it's a role that I feel is becoming ever increasingly, known about. And there's a course at Berkeley that you could do on music supervision. And so I think when I started out in music supervision, there were definitely far less of us, not to sound too old. But also, sometimes directors or producers would be like, I don't really understand what you do. Whereas I think there's definitely a much broader understanding as to what the role is, the importance of having a music supervisor on board, across the board, within both film and television. So I think the Emmys is a kind of reflection of that as well, that category being created. So yeah, it's brilliant, and it's really exciting for all of us out there that, are working very hard and do the role. So yeah. It's positive.
I totally agree. I just think it's one of the most interesting parts of watching a series. Sometimes we don't notice the work that you're doing behind the scenes, which is probably intentional because we're just so immersed in the emotion. But every once in a while, and which is the whole point of what you and Martin and the editors and the cinematographers so forth are doing. But every once in a while, you'll pick that one song or that one cue that will spark that emotion that nothing else quite does it in that way. And I was wondering if you could, apart from Edge of 17, because that was absolutely a good one, was there another track in particular from season 4 that you were most proud of that really just set the tone for what the scene was supposed to say?
I think it probably was Song for Guy by Elton John, which is kind of one of those standout musical choices for sure. It just felt very powerful and very fitting, with her and with her character and the friendship that they had, especially. And yeah, it just felt like a very fitting moment there. But equally, yeah, several within 405 and throughout the season. So I think one of the absolute highlights that was a very unexpected, to go back to Edge of 17, was that Stevie Nicks, we asked her management team, to get the stems so that we could do a bit of an edit to the track. And when they sent it over, we heard the a cappella because we had all of the individual stems, and it's never been out in the world before. And then laid it over the end credits. And obviously at the end of that episode, it's such a kind of, Diana is so isolated, and so the other end of the spectrum of where we see her at the beginning of that episode, and I think that's really reflected in the use of the a cappella over the end credits. And we obviously had to go back and get permission, and thankfully she said yes, which was a joy. And I don't know how many people make it into the credits anyway, but yeah, it was really, really like wonderful to have that use within that as well. But and I think also the other thing with music supervision, and to go back to the music supervision kind of craft category, is the amount of work that can go into new recordings and live recordings or pre-records. So for example, there's the whole sequence of the Phantom of Opera scene, and obviously worked very closely with Andrew Lloyd Webber's company to get permissions. And then also we had to do some kind of rearranging because we couldn't fit the full recording and orchestra on the stage. But for example, I hired 28-piece orchestra that were going to feature on camera, but that we were in the theatre at like 7 a.m. when they were filming, to do the recording on the day ahead of filming commencing. So there's a huge amount of work that I guess goes into what we do within our role, outside of sitting and choosing songs to feature, to put into the right places, which obviously is a wonderful and creative and huge part of the job as well. But there's a massive amount of work that can go into the other elements of it, particularly a lot of the on-camera work that I've done across The Crown and that other music supervisors do across various other shows and TV as well. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I honestly believe that you have my dream job, and I'm very jealous. But I just want to thank you. I can't ever take over. Thank you so much for your time today, Sarah. Really interesting insight, and good luck this Emmy season. Hopefully we'll see you on the ballot.
Great. Thanks very much. All right. Take care. Bye.